Hello and welcome. My name is Un-Gerrymandering, and this is my senior honors project. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Obviously, a difficult time to be doing something like this, certainly an odd time to be doing something like this, but it gave me a reason to finally shave and actually put on a shirt and tie, so it's not all bad. Anyway, this is my project. It's titled Un-Gerrymandering Michigan, a hypothetical look into our congressional map following the 2020 census and redistricting. A few things we're going to cover within this presentation. We're going to talk about my background for doing this, the methodology that I used, and then we're going to look at my proposed congressional map of what a fair congressional map for Michigan could look like. First of all, a little bit of background on gerrymandering, because we talk about it so much in politics today, but there are still some that don't fully understand it. The process of gerrymandering is the process of unfairly drawing and redistricting congressional maps, or any legislative map for that matter, within a state to benefit typically a party or some individuals or some sort of interest. And it's done through the method of packing and cracking. Packing voters is taking voters of an opposition party, so let's say you're a Democrat, taking Republicans and putting them, as many of them, into one district as possible, because in essence, every vote over 50% is really a wasted vote in essence. So you could make a district that's 70% or 80% Republican, which is really wasting the votes of 20 or 30% of the Republican voters in that district, which allows you to then crack voters in other districts where you can take an area that has a strong threshold of voters of your opposition party, and you can separate that city between multiple different districts, really diluting the power of their vote. Those are the two methods that are predominantly used to do gerrymandering. It's a practice that has a long-standing tradition in American politics, going all the way back to the early 1800s, and the term was coined after the governor of Massachusetts, a man named Elbridge Gerry, and his party had really done one of the first attempts to severely gerrymander their map to benefit their party. Some newspapermen got a hold of this and created this famous political cartoon here, in which they were suggesting that the way that the map was drawn looked more like a salamander of some sort than any sort of fair congressional map. And they took that term salamander and combined it with the name of the governor, Elbridge Gerry, and coined it gerrymandering, which is actually pronounced differently than what we pronounce it today, gerrymandering. It's because of the way that it was published in newspapers that people didn't hear the name firsthand. They were reading it on paper, and most people thought it was pronounced Jerry. So we got that soft G just from people's mispronunciation and word of mouth over years. But originally it was called gerrymandering. Another motto I try to go by, because I think people don't fully understand this as we talk about gerrymandering today, is that just because a district looks funny, because it looks misshapen, because it doesn't look like a perfect circle or square, does not mean that it's a gerrymander. Gerrymandering is a process that's done very intentionally to carve out certain areas to benefit one party or one person or some sort of interest. Sometimes districts just look odd based on the way that people live within that area, because of population distribution, because of preserving certain communities of interest. So just because it looks funny does not mean it's a gerrymander. I'm going to come back to that multiple times throughout this, because I think that's something really important to keep in mind. Other things on the background, this is a very relevant project right now. Obviously, we're undergoing the 2020 census right now, and with that is the process of redistricting that follows after the census data is released, and those maps will be in place for the 2022 congressional elections. Additionally, with that, we just passed in Michigan Proposal 18-2, or as we knew it in 2018, just Proposal 2, which created a nonpartisan citizen redistricting commission. It passed overwhelmingly 61% to 39%. And that is going to create something similar. I explain it in that it's similar to jury duty, in that there is a panel of people that are selected, average citizens just like you and me, no political actors, no insiders, no lobbyists, that are then tasked with drawing all of our maps to use for the entire decade. Also, there's been a great deal of recent litigation on the topic, going all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has been very cold to taking on cases like this, and they haven't really done a lot about it, but it's been a topic of frequent discussion, frequent litigation, so it is definitely very relevant and very pressing right now. Another thing that was critical to this project was my inspiration for it, which came from the website 538. If you've never seen it, it's a really fascinating website. And they published a document, an article of sorts, called the Atlas of Redistricting, which we'll talk about in just a moment. But first, let's talk about 538 as a website. If you've never heard of it, it's a website that does statistical analysis, predominantly on politics and a little bit on sports, but also on science and health and economics as well. It's really fascinating if you haven't checked it out. They have some really great articles on there. And one of these great articles was the Atlas of Redistricting, was this big project they undertook, taking several methods of gerrymandering, showing what gerrymandering and unfair redistricting looks like, or what fair redistricting looks like for all 50 states across the country. You can look at the entire country, you can look at all 50 specific states, but I'm focusing just on Michigan for the purposes of this project. Now, as you can see in this bar here, there are a number of different methods that they took. Let's talk about each of them individually. The first is our current congressional districts here in the state of Michigan. This map was drawn by Republicans in 2010 to benefit themselves. It's a map that throughout most of the decade produced only 5 Democratic representatives and 9 Republican representatives out of 14. And that only just changed in 2018 when Democrats flipped 2, and it became 7 and 7. But throughout the decade, this was a map that definitely benefited Republicans greatly. The next to look at is a map that favors Republicans. So this is done by, like we talked about earlier, packing Democratic voters, like connecting the cities of Flint and Lansing through a very thin thread here, into a very strongly Democratic district. And having a few other strongly Democratic districts in the Detroit area, and then cracking the rest of the Democratic voters in the suburban communities and exurban communities to produce an overwhelming number of 10 Republican districts and 4 Democratic districts. Obviously, this is a bad method, and it packs Democrats in a way that's completely unfair. We could also gerrymander Michigan to benefit Democrats. So that could be done by taking some Democratic cities and trying to loop them together, like Lansing all the way over to Muskegon by a thread, or Grand Rapids, and looks like Kalamazoo there, as well as Benton Harbor, to produce Democratic districts in parts of the state that usually don't have them. And then also really spreading Democrats very thin in terms of their suburban voters, and even actually parts of Detroit, looks like, in the Metro Detroit area, which produces 9 Democrats and 5 Republicans statewide. Obviously, this is a bad way to redistrict. We don't really need to consider it. It's just awful. And that's exactly what we're trying to prevent. So now for some methods of redistricting that are actually attempts to be fairer. One of which is matching the partisan breakdown of the electorate to the proportion of representatives for each party. So this is more of a top-down approach by saying that Michigan is a competitive state, roughly 50-50 between Democrats and Republicans, at least as of late. How could we draw a map that has the same number, roughly, of Democrats and Republicans? The outcome of it is fairly good. It produces 6 Democrats and 7 Republicans with 1 highly competitive seat here in the Flint area. But that being said, though, I'm not sure that this is a method that I find compelling, predominantly because I don't think that the motive is correct. I think it has a good outcome in terms of its fairness, but the motive of having a certain proportion from the top, I don't think is a good way to do that, because I think you're missing on certain crucial elements that you need to keep in mind with redistricting from the bottom up and communities. Another method is promoting highly competitive elections. I think this map is completely chaotic and it makes me laugh, but producing as many toss-up competitive districts as possible, it's insane. This would cause Michigan to have some very costly elections that probably bring a ton of national attention to Michigan that I think would be too much for us. And I don't think either party wants this. Some people think that this is an appropriate way to redistrict, that having as many competitive elections as possible is good, so that you can have parties win either way in surge environments. But I think this is just too extreme. It has too many competitive districts, and you'd want, Democrats or Republicans to have a decent number of seats, instead of having a Republican wave and having Republicans win 11 or 12 districts, as opposed to Democrats only 2. That would be scary, or the other way around, 11 to 3. It would just be wrong for a state like Michigan. You could also maximize the number of majority-minority districts. This is something that's really prevalent since the Voting Rights Act, in terms of making sure that communities of color have their own representatives. This map might look very familiar to you. That's because it's the exact same map that we have right now. We have two majority-minority districts, the 13th and 14th, and realistically, with the population of voters of color that we have in Michigan, it would be hard to create more than two. So they just said that that would be the best way to have the most. It's just two. Another interesting method is making districts compact using an algorithm. So as you can see, having very rounded corners. This is done electronically, with computers, mathematically, to create districts that are as small and as compact as possible without having arms branching out and different blocky structures and whatnot that we usually associate with gerrymandered districts. But like we said earlier, just because it looks funny doesn't mean it's a gerrymander, and just because you can make it round doesn't mean it's not that's a good map. I think this map is wrong for a couple reasons. It's good in terms of its competitiveness. It produces a strong number of competitive districts, but it splits up a lot of communities of interest that don't need to be done in that way by just making them bubble-shaped. I think that that's the wrong way to go about it. This way, I think, is a better alternative, which is making districts compact while following county borders as best as possible. So this is done to try to make these districts, smaller, because when we think about districts that are super spread out, generally that's where we get concerned. Making these districts compact within themselves, but also having them observe county borders, which are generally one of the best ways to observe political communities. Generally, voters within a certain county are most similar to voters within the same county, rather than people from other parts of the state. And that's the whole purpose of making a congressional district, is to have voters come together and make a decision together from a collective standpoint. So I do think that this is actually, of the ways that is shown, I think this is the most compelling way to do it. So with that being said, I combined a few of these ideas into my own methodology that I kept in mind when I was making my own congressional districts. The first of which being that last one, preserving communities of interest and existing governmental boundaries. So trying to keep voters that are most similar to other voters in the same areas. People that are similar should be able to vote in the same district. The second one, and these are in order, by the way, from the top down in terms of how I rank them in my mind. The second was matching the partisanship of communities and regions of the state. Basically, if, let's say, there's a certain part of the state that's just a certain partisanship. Let's say like the Lansing area. The Lansing area within itself is actually somewhat Democratic nowadays. There could be a compelling argument that we should create a Democratic district that surrounds Lansing. Or we could say that the western parts of Michigan or the middle parts of Michigan are very Republican, so we shouldn't draw them into Democratic districts, we should draw them into Republican districts, because that just makes sense with the way that voters in that part of the state are. We can also match partisanship and competitiveness of the state overall. So I do think that there were good outcomes in trying to have a fair number of seats for each party at the state level. It's not a top interest, though. I don't think that that's a top interest, but it's one to keep in mind as you're going through this process. And then the last one I chose was just to be as compact as possible within reason. Obviously, you can't be perfect, and we're not going to have those bubble districts. But trying to be as compact as possible is definitely a good outcome when we think about what a fair map would be. Lastly, let's talk about the way that I was able to make these maps, because I was able to use an app called Dave's Redistricting App, also known as DRA. It was created by Dave Bradley, who is an at-home software engineer who had a huge passion for actually redistricting reform and making sure that we put a stop to gerrymandering. So he created this free online web-based software that allows you to create your own districts for any state or level, all the way down to city council even. And you can play with it and make your own maps. And it's actually the same one that was used by the 538 website to create the Atlas of Redistricting, so the same as my inspiration. I use the same methodology. And it's also very user-intuitive and very fun. I'd highly recommend you go check it out, and I will put a link in the description of this video so that you can check it out later. So look at our current congressional maps. This is the state of Michigan currently. We currently have 14 districts, but almost all census projections show that Michigan has been losing people, and we are very likely to lose one of our congressional districts following the 2020 census. So we'll be down to 13, and that's what my map will be. It'll be 13. But currently we have 14. The current makeup of it is 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans. That was following 2018 when two seats flipped from Democrat to Republican. Before 2018, it was 5 Democrats and 9 Republicans, which that lasted from 2018 to 2012. So I think that shows you that the map was a Republican gerrymander. They had a strong dominance throughout the decades for Republicans. That was only unforeseen until 2018, how there would be a suburban shift, whereas they thought that the 11th district and the 8th district were meant to be safe Republican districts, and they were throughout the decade. But they were finally able to flip in 2018 because of the demographic shifts in our political world. Now that we've looked at the former 14, and we will look back at them in comparison in a moment, but I'm going to now get to finally show you my proposed districts. I'm really excited about this. I hope you are too. This is what we have statewide. Very exciting. I know you can't figure out what to make of it right now, but we'll go through each of them and explain every single detail within them. So the first is the 1st Congressional District, which is the same as it currently is, basically. It's the Upper Peninsula and then much of the northern Michigan counties. It's represented by Jack Bergman, who still lives in this district, in this configuration. Donald Trump won it in 2016, 60% to 35%, but President Obama actually won it in 2008, 49.4% to 48.8%, so just by a hair. I don't have the numbers for 2012 for these districts. I apologize for that. And 2008 was a very different time. Actually, President Obama, I believe, won 11 of these 13 districts, but that was because he had such a broad coalition across the state that has changed so much demographically since then. But it's just interesting to look back, so I'll have those numbers as well. This is a safely Republican district. Back as recently as 2010, this area was represented by a Democrat in the UP. His name was Bart Stupak. He was known for being one of the most prominent pro-life Democrats in the House, but he chose to retire in 2010 before the Republican wave, I believe. So it's not an area that's very friendly to Democrats. A long time ago it could be, and maybe in the future, but for now, we're pretty fair to say that this is a safe Republican district. The changes from the former district is that we lose the Leelanau Peninsula and the western part of the state that's currently incorporated. Instead, we get these 6 counties here, more the mid-northern part of the state, and then also the eastern shore. So in comparison to the old district used to go down into the west. Now this district goes down to the east, but obviously the Upper Peninsula is completely unchanged. Next is the 2nd district. This could be either represented by the current 4th District Representative, John Molinar, or it could be represented by the 2nd District Representative, Bill Huizenga. John Molinar lives over here in Midland. Bill Huizenga actually no longer lives in this district, even though much of this district is currently his territory, but he lives in this southern part of Ottawa County in Zeeland. So he no longer lives in this area. It would be unclear if he would want to move here, or he wouldn't have to move necessarily. You don't have to reside in a congressional district to represent it. So he could choose to run here, or it could be John Molinar, either one of the two. This is basically the middle part of the state and much of the western shore, and it combines parts of the old 2nd District, the old 4th District, and the 1st District. So as you can kind of get a cross-section of what we're looking at here, this is the 2nd District that Bill Huizenga represents. You can see everything except for the Ottawa County portion here, and then also the Kent County portion that it cuts into to cut out parts of areas that surround Grand Rapids. Those are all removed and put into other districts. Instead, you get more of the northern parts and more of the middle parts. So this is now my proposed 2nd district. My apologies, my allergies have been acting up. I'm not sick, I just get the urge to cough every now and then. This is our new 3rd Congressional District. It's very different from what the 3rd Congressional District is currently, but it would still currently be represented by Justin Amash, the only independent in Congress. Very interesting stuff surrounding Justin Amash. If you don't know about him, you can look him up and find all sorts of interesting things as a representative. Donald Trump won this district in 2016 by 51% to 42%. So by a 9-point margin, which is similar to what the current 3rd District is, but it incorporates different communities. And also John McCain actually won this district, one of the 2 districts that John McCain won in 2008. He won at 51% to 47%, which I think speaks to the fact that while other parts of the state, especially the more Republican rural areas, have moved so overwhelmingly away from President Obama from 2008 over to Donald Trump in 2016, I think What that speaks in this district is that there were some of those voters that moved in that direction, but those voters were also counteracted by a large growth of younger, diverse, more liberal voters, especially in areas like Grand Rapids and some of the suburban communities that surround it. I think there were both things happening at once, and that's why overall the district remained fairly consistent over the course of 6 years, or over the course of 8 years, when no other districts in the state remained that consistent. This is probably a likely Republican district. I think there could be environments in which a Democrat could flip this, but it would be unlikely. The changes is that it gets rid of Ionia, Berry, and Calhoun County, which is what the district does to snake down this way currently, and it replaces it with the northern half of Ottawa County, including Allendale Township. So for those of us Lakers, we can finally say that the Allendale campus and the Grand Rapids campus will actually be in the same congressional district, as they currently aren't, and it's a real bother. So currently you can see the district gets a big portion of Kent County chopped out by the 2nd district, and instead it just goes down this way. Now you get most of Kent County except for these parts cut out that we'll talk about later. It goes out towards western areas, towards Lake Michigan, and parts of Ottawa County that I think are really a big part of the suburban Grand Rapids metro, which is why I wanted to include them, because these are a lot of people that live in Ottawa County but commute to Grand Rapids every single day for work. It's a growing population. The next district is the new 4th district. It's very similar to the current 6th. I know these numbers get a little bit confusing, but bear with me here. This could be represented by Fred Upton, but Fred Upton actually lives in St. Joseph here, so he actually no longer lives in this district. Fred Upton has been the congressman for Southwest Michigan for decades now, a very long time. He's actually one of the longest serving members of the House, getting close to being the Dean of the House if a few other people do decide to retire before he does. This is a district that voted for Donald Trump 50% to 44%, so not by a very wide margin, but that's actually kind of similar to the current 6th district. Also, I will add too, Bill Huizenga does actually live in this portion of Ottawa County. If he wanted to make the jump and represent a very different district that he now lives in, he could do that. We'd see what would happen, but this is all hypothetical anyway. This is a district that would probably lean Republican. As recent as 2018, though Fred Upton's been in the House for decades now, he had the closest election of his life in 2018, in which he only won by about 4.5% over Matt Longjohn. So this is a district that many believe is lean Republican going into 2020, definitely kind of a sleeper hit for Democrats to look at flipping. Unclear if they could, but certainly better chances now than they have had in a long time with Fred Upton here in the 6th district. And it adds part of Ottawa County, as well as part of Calhoun County, which then adds Battle Creek to this district, which I think really belongs with Kalamazoo. They're very similar cities over here in the southwestern portion of the state. I think they are similar enough to put in the same district. And in return for those areas, you lose St. Joseph County, Cass County, and then part of Berrien County here as well. To compare the two, here is the old 6th district, and then here is the new 4th district. So a little bit different, a little bit more misshapen. The 6th district, I will compliment it on its nice compactness. So it definitely loses a bit out on that, but I think it makes more sense culturally in terms of the cities that we're including here. And like we said at the beginning, just because it looks funny doesn't mean it's a gerrymander. The new 5th district is a lot like the current 7th. It would be represented by Tim Walberg, who is a Republican. This is a district that Donald Trump won 58% to 36%, so by a wide margin. We'd consider this a safe Republican district, even though President Obama won it by a couple points back in 2008. The changes from the current 7th district is that it goes a little bit further to the west here to incorporate some of these southern strip counties, and it loses Eaton County, which is part of the Lansing Metro and is really part of the gerrymandering effort that tied up and split up the Lansing area in the current map. We just get rid of that, make these part of the central and southern parts of the state of Michigan, all the way down to Monroe County here. It makes a lot more sense geographically, culturally, everything, and politically too. I apologize. This is the old 7th district. As you can see, it goes all the way up here to Eaton County, and even does more of a curve around in Washtenaw County. Much less of that now. Let's just make that a nice, fair stretch along the southern portion of the state. Continuing now on to the 6th district, this is very similar to the current 5th. It's the district that incorporates Flint, Saginaw, and Bay City. Currently, that's represented by Dan Kildee, a Democrat. This is a district, this version, only narrowly voted for Hillary Clinton, 47.8% to 47.3%, so just by a hair. That's not terribly dissimilar from the current 5th district. Donald Trump did almost win that district, within a few points, I believe. But this is a district that down ballot is much more favorable to Democrats. I think Dan Kildee wins by 20% or more every time. I think in 2018 he won by 24% or so. And it was an exceptionally bad area for Hillary Clinton as well, in terms of Saginaw County and Bay County, which are reliably and usually Democratic counties that she just totally floundered in. So that Trump performance here does not tell the whole story here in this district. For that reason, I'd say it's a likely Democratic district. It could be conceivable that a Republican could flip this, but down ballot, Democrats do tend to do better. The changes from the current district is that it completes Saginaw County, a large part of which is cut out by the current 4th district, and it stops the stretch all the way up the eastern shore that it currently does in its current configuration, and it trades that by completing Saginaw, and then also adding some rural parts of northern Oakland County, which are very similar culturally to Genesee County. So to compare the two, you can see that the current 5th district here is this weird snake that goes all the way up the eastern side of the state. We're much more simplifying this to be fairly cohesive. A few counties that are complete, and then just a few portions of other counties as well. And it chops Bay County in half with the 1st district in half, but it does include all of Bay City and the area that surrounds it. The new 7th district is really a district in its own. You could say a lot of the other districts in this map are based or similar to current districts. The 7th district is really its own invention. I think this is the way it should be. This is the Lansing metro area. Lansing is a community that stretches between several counties. It has people even that commute to Lansing from areas like Livingston County here. It incorporates several counties that are very culturally similar, very regionally similar as well. Donald Trump nearly won this district 49% to 45%, which is very similar to the current 8th district, which is represented by Alyssa Slotkin. And I think this is a district that probably would have flipped in 2018 more than likely. The interesting thing here is that Alyssa Slotkin, I put a question mark here because she actually lives in Holly, which is in the top left corner of Oakland County here, as the district currently goes from Ingham, Livingston to part of Oakland County. It's the current configuration. That being said, she wouldn't have to live here if she just chose to run here. It's possible, or she could choose to move here for her own political expediency and avoid the controversy of not living in the district. Ultimately, though, I think this would be a toss-up district like the current 8th district is, and it combines several parts of the former districts that just totally chop up this area between the 3rd district, the 4th district, the 8th district, and the 7th district. It makes it just so much simpler to just have them be, and not that this was intentional, but it's almost a square. I really wasn't trying to make it a square, but gosh, it turned out to be almost a square, which is pretty nice. The new 8th district is also fairly dissimilar from what we have right now. This could be represented by Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, but the issue for her is that she lives in Dearborn, which is now no longer part of this district, like it currently is. It's a district that was won pretty well by Hillary Clinton, 55% to 40%, and I would consider this a safe Democratic district. In its current configuration, the district goes from portions of Washtenaw County here all the way to the downriver communities of Wayne County, and then it includes Dearborn, which is a very large, heavily Arab American community. Dearborn, fun fact, is the largest concentration and population of Arab Americans anywhere in the world outside of the Middle East. So it's a very large community, heavily Muslim, heavily Arab American. That being said, they don't need to be incorporated in this district. They deserve some sort of representation of their own. The current configuration really dilutes the power of the Arab American voters in that community. So instead, I'm trying to have this district instead go all the way up through Livingston County into Brighton, which is a big community that definitely shares a lot with Ann Arbor in terms of people that live here and commute back and forth between two communities. It also includes, just here in Oakland County, is a community called South Lyon. South Lyon stretches over the Livingston County border and is really practically part of Livingston County, more than it is actually much part of Oakland County in terms of the way the residents live there and commute to communities like Brighton or Ann Arbor. This district kind of makes an L. It's not a great shape, but it's kind of a big exurban stretch around Detroit. And like we said, just because it looks funny doesn't mean it's a gerrymander. I think this is actually a fairly fair way to draw this. It incorporates a great deal of population voters that are culturally similar to one another. In comparison, it's difficult to see here, but this is the current 12th district, kind of does the same shape here. Instead, it doesn't go all the way to Dearborn like it does. It just has these downriver, former white working class, former industrial communities. Instead, it trades that for going all the way up here through Livingston County, as you can see here, which is in the current 8th district. Then there is the 9th district. This is most similar to the current 11th. It would probably be represented by Haley Stevens, who lives in Rochester Hills here. It voted for Donald Trump just by a hair, 47.9% to 47.2%, and President Obama 53 to 46. I would consider this a lean D district, if not a likely D district. It's even bluer than the current 11th district is, but that was a district that really flipped heavily in 2018 because of these suburban communities that moved so far away from Republicans and towards Democrats. I think Haley Stevens won by 7% or so, and that's an even more Republican configuration than it is here. I think Donald Trump won it by at least a few points as opposed to less than a single percent. So this would definitely be a district that's even in its history, but I think is moving well towards Democrats, that we would really consider this to be a Democratic district here. It's a big suburban area, and it eliminates the swirling mess of districts in Oakland County. So instead it includes big suburban communities like Plymouth here, Novi, Farmington, and Farmington Hills, which in the current district are chopped up. West Bloomfield, Pontiac, which is a large African-American community here. And so the old Oakland County, and it's even almost impossible to see here, but this is the 11th district here. It's such a swirling mess of districts that just wrap around one another. Instead, it just takes a big just swath of the county and adding in Plymouth, because Plymouth is really a city that really is more Oakland County than it is Wayne County in a lot of ways. Very prominent, wealthy suburban county. So yes, moving on is the new 10th district. My apologies. Out of every district in the entire map, this is the one that's probably the most unchanged. This is just the thumb district, and it's basically the same, and it probably should be the same no matter what way you cut it. But they voted for Donald Trump overwhelmingly, 63% to 33%, so this is a safely Republican district. The changes are that it gets rid of some chopping that happens here in Tuscola County with the current 5th district, and it also refines the line that separates northern from southern Macomb County here. So if we take a look at the current configuration, it's very similar. Just gets rid of this, and then changes the line in Macomb County just a little bit. The north-south divide between Macomb County is very real. The southern parts of Macomb County are more liberal. The northern parts of Macomb County are getting much more conservative. And when we talk about the fact that Macomb County shifted so hard towards Donald Trump, we talk about Trump Democrats in Macomb County and whatnot. The northern parts of Macomb County are a huge part of that. More a big shift there. So that's a very conservative area, and that's the 10th district. This is the new 11th district. It would be represented by Andy Levin. It's very similar to the current 9th, but it's much more refined and less complicated. Hillary Clinton won it by about 6%, which is similar to the current configuration. She didn't win it by a massive amount, but it is still a safe Democratic district. Kind of another one of those communities where Hillary Clinton did worse than most Democrats do, and most Democrats do pretty well here. But Macomb County here is mostly the same, but then it stretches over into Oakland County and does some very different things. With Oakland County, it includes a community like Troy, whereas the old configuration did this weird wraparound that's kind of just hideous and bad. So you just do that in a much more fair way by just not doing that. Then on to the 12th district. This is represented by Brenda Lawrence. This is one of our two majority-minority districts, being 59% African American. It overwhelmingly voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, 76% to 21%. It's a safe Democratic district. And instead of doing what it currently does, where it snakes up into Oakland County, and I'll show you in a moment, it trades cities like Pontiac, West Bloomfield, and Farmington Hills instead for Livonia and Redford, which are just other suburban communities located in Wayne County. It also gets rid of this weird thing that it does with downtown Detroit. So if I can go over to the next picture, you could see that it does this weird chain all the way up into Oakland County just to snatch the city of Pontiac, which is a strong blue, heavily African American city. Don't do that anymore. Just keep it in the southern parts of Oakland County, here in Southfield, which is another strong African American community where Brenda Lawrence used to be the mayor. Still keeps the Grosse Pointe communities, but please don't do this thing where you chop out the downtown parts of Detroit. It's kind of just hideous. This is probably, I would say, the most gerrymandered district in the entire current configuration, especially this part here where they take Farmington and put it in the 11th, but leave Farmington Hills, which is the more Democratic part, and put it in the 14th. It's really hideous. Those are kept in the same district in this map. The last district we have here is the 13th district, which would be represented by Rashida Tlaib. This is another majority-minority district where 38% of voters are African American and 10% are Hispanic. There's a large Hispanic population in Southwest Detroit here. So this is a minority coalition district, which is applicable with the Voting Rights Act. Additionally, the numbers here say that the demographics here are 48% white. I don't think that that's fully accurate because census data considers voters of Arab American descent and Muslim nationalities to be white, and that's, as we know, not really quite true. It eliminates a lot of the data that we have available to us, so it makes this district seem a lot whiter than it is. But between Dearborn and Dearborn Heights, there's an immense amount of Arab American voters in this district. I don't know what the percentage would be, but I could bet you it would be at least 5%, if not far more, within this district. That would also be represented by Rashida Tlaib, one of the two Muslim women in Congress. So that would be a good way for their voices to be represented, in addition to other parts of Wayne County as well. Another very strongly Democratic district. This is 71% to 25% for Hillary Clinton. And it adds Dearborn and Taylor, which used to be in the 12th district, to the 13th district, and it gets rid of Redford and a few other Detroit neighborhoods that really complicate the shape of this district. So you can see overall the architecture is actually fairly similar. It's not a horrible way to design the district, but certainly some of the stylistic choices that they made within are very poor. Make that a lot simpler and make this district more cohesive as a whole. So to go back, we've covered all 13 districts. This is the map as a whole. Hopefully it makes a little bit more sense to you, and I will include a link to this map so you can look at all the intricacies and see all the numbers for yourself if you're interested in that as well. I will include a link in the description for that. Now, I'm just going to go over some of the breakdown. This is from Dave's Redistricting app that shows us the breakdown partisan-wise of the districts that we have. There are 7 districts that lean Republican out of 13, 4 that lean Democrat, and 2 that are even. I disagree with that a little bit, and we'll talk about each of the competitive districts individually just to wrap things up. The first is the Grand Rapids area district, that 3rd district. It's similar to its current partisanship. It could flip to a Democrat, but it would take a very strong environment to do so, so most of the time, if not all the time, for the entire decade, it could be a Republican district, but it's as close as Democrats can get in that area. The 4th district, I would say, is more likely to flip than the 3rd district, including, that's similar to the current configurations of the 3rd and 6th. And it was within a few points of flipping in 2018 with Fred Upton on the ballot, only 4 points. I think this current configuration is actually a little bit bluer by including the little blue hub of Holland as well as Battle Creek. So this district actually could flip, but yet to be seen. The 6th district is one I disagree with. It says that it's even, but again, that's just based on its 2016 numbers. This is that Flint Bay Saginaw district. I think this would be nearly a safe Democratic district, but maybe we could say it's slightly Democratic. But it's not even, so I'd say that that makes at least 5 Democratic districts pretty strongly. It could flip in a wave Republican year, though, so I think that that's fair. If Republicans can do really well, they probably can make a play for this district. The next district is the 7th district, which is the Lansing Metro District. It's very similar geographically and politically to the current 8th district, which did flip in 2018. And even though Donald Trump won it by a handful, this area swung towards Democrats. So I do think that this district would have flipped, meaning this district that is considered fair Republican, that would go down to 6 leaning Republican districts. The 9th district, which is the Oakland County suburbs, that's that Haley Stevens flipped in 2018 district. It's even bluer than the current configuration. It says it's even here, apparently to Republicans by a point, but I really do think that this district will be a Democratic district, at least as of now, and for the near future. So I could even say that this would be really 6 leaning Democratic districts, 7 leaning Republican districts overall. And then lastly, there's this Oakland and Macomb County suburban district, the Andy Levin district. It could be within Republicans for a really strong wave year, but I don't know if it's terribly likely. A similar configuration wasn't able to flip in 2010, so I don't think that that's very much at play, but it's definitely on the outer reaches of viability for Republicans. So to wrap things up, I want to talk about some of the strengths of my map, why I think it makes it a fair alternative to what we have now. It's very competitive, and it gives a strong advantage to either party in a wave election. In a strong Democratic year like 2018, I think that Democrats probably would have held 7 of them, getting those 2 ones that were labeled even, as well as the one that's fair Republican, that Lansing area district. I think that Democrats would have had 7 out of 13, giving them the majority. And even possibly 8. That 4th district, that Southwest district, may have been even better for them and could have actually flipped in 2018. In a strong Republican year, I think they could get as many as 8 or 9. And in an average election, I think either party is trading between 6 and 7. So I think this makes it fair in that in a wave election, a wave party is going to win a great number of seats in Michigan. Either way, goes either way. And in any normal, fair, competitive election, about 6 or 7, which is pretty fair to what we are as a state as a whole. Generally, we're pretty 50-50. So I think that makes it fair statewide. And then another strength, I believe, for my map is how compact it is and how it's able to preserve boundaries. We're able to make fewer cuts within counties than the current map does, which were obviously done intentionally. And the districts are also more compact with fewer thinly stretched and contorted districts. You saw the way that some of them are drawn in just really bizarre ways that connect parts of the states and different areas that just don't have anything to do with one another. I think this is more cohesive, especially in preserving more communities of interest, like the Lansing metro area, which shouldn't be split between 4 districts. It should really be in its own area, and given their own opportunity to be competitive as a region, as the Lansing area really is competitive, generally. So that's everything I have for this presentation. I want to just thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope this was enjoyable for you, and I'm going to provide links in the description for the Atlas of Redistricting, for Dave's Redistricting app, for my map, and other things as well, so you can take a look for yourself. I get a great deal of enjoyment out of this. This project was an absolute blast to do, and I assure you, if you're someone like myself that has a hobby enjoyment for politics, you can spend hours and have a great time with some of these resources, just amusing yourself. But anyway, thank you so much for tuning in today, and I wish you health, I wish you well, and yes.